Hi, this is Stacy and Vince with 2 Weeks in a Hammock, and we are at the Bournique Place on North Manitou Island. So we're going to walk around and show you what the outside looks like. We are in the Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore on North Manitou Island, about 3.5 miles south of the village on the southeast side of the island, at the Bournique Place. The Bourniques were Alvar and Mary, and they had daughters Elizabeth and Mary. They owned dance studios in the greater Chicago area, and they lived up here in the summers. This house was built in 1904, and it is built similar to a Louisiana Creole architectural style with a French style of vertical logs that you can see have some kind of mortar between the logs. And that's a very unique architectural style. We're going to step back here and take a look at the house so I can give you like a bigger perspective of it. This house was homesteaded, which meant that they documented their improvements every 10 years on the census. And by 1910, they had 30 acres, and their young girls were ages 7 and 10. Nearby, there was a barn and a caretaker's house, and John and Ildry Anderson were the caretakers. And so if you were to go here and walk over to the west, this direction a bit farther, you would find that barn ruin. This ruin right here used to be a garage because they did have a car at one point in time. They also raised horses. And this back porch faces to the west. There's this cement patio, and there's a cement walkway. And this is a 2-story ice house, which would have had ice in the top, and this bottom portion would have had the dairy and other perishables. Down here we have 2 privies, and beyond the privies was a driveway area, and beyond that was a washroom. So if you look in the trees there, you can find the ruins of that. And this is what's left of a walkway that came down toward this roadway here. The Berniques did live here every year from May to September. The house was last occupied in 1941. Eventually in 1938, the Berniques moved to Leland, and Alvar Bournique died that same year. But Mary Bournique came back every summer. From 1942 through 46, she came and visited and stayed at the Manitou Island Association Lodge in the village area and came down and visited the house. We'll peek in this window and you can see through this main hallway that cuts right through the center of the house. That was part of the Creole architectural design. And this interior of the house was completely rebuilt. A few years ago, this house was in very bad shape, and the park did a major project. The roof was redone, and up here we're going to look up, and we'll look inside this window real quick. But then I want to look up and show you on the outside there is like a 2x12 board that has bolts on it. And looking over here in the yard real quick, looking at that 2-story ice house. And this is the board with the bolts that's holding the house together. It goes around the entire outside of the house. And this was all boarded up a few years ago, and you couldn't even peek in the windows. And the interior had been collapsed, but the park has since restored that interior and rebuilt the floors. And there's a possibility of adaptive reuse of the structure eventually. This area over to the side here did have a horse area, because there's evidence of fence posts and wiring over on that side. And looking over here, we can see back up to this 1.5-story house area with the upper dormers, which had some beautiful views toward the lake shore. That direction is to the east, and this porch looked over to the east. This vegetation was cut back recently. The Park Service did a fire protection project to get vegetation away from these historic structures. This particular structure does sit in wilderness on North Manitou, which makes working on it with projects a little bit trickier. And this is the front porch, and we're going to walk up and take a look. inside this way. This house was purchased by the Manitou Island Association in the late 1950s and not really used again after that. The Manitou Island Association was purchasing up property to make a resort on the island for hunting. When the Bourniques did live here, they hired islanders to come help and take care of the housekeeping chores, help staff their farm year-round. Eventually, the farm did grow to 400 acres. And we'll step back here to get another shot of the house. And then we'll take a look at the house again from the side so that you can see what this looks like. And this is the side facing to the south. Thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments.